All right, how's it going, you guys? This is Peter Han, and we're going to do a unboxing and a quick review impression on this product that Wacom was happy to send to me, which is the Cintiq 16-inch, the Creative Pen display. I'm going to talk about a bit of the differences between the Pro version to this version. In terms of on paper, I'm obviously going to be handling this one in particular. Now, of course, this one came out earlier in this year. I was sent to it many months ago. I didn't get around to actually reviewing this up until just now. So I really wanted to get in there and actually get a sense as to whether I myself would even really need to have something like this. There was a front of the box. Here's the back of it. Kind of shows you just some of the basic information about what we have. This is obviously the Cintiq, not the Pro version, but just a Wacom Cintiq. This one in particular does come with the Wacom Pro Pen 2. This is a battery-free pen. This is a 1080 display. It's one of the key differences between this and the Pro version. This also is not the touch sensitive as the other one is. So, just to get a sense of the scale of the box, what you have on all sides. This has not been opened at all, and I'm actually going to be going into it for the first time now. So let's open it up, and we'll see what we have. And at this point, we have the interior carriage for the actual display monitor. Support information, website, social media, packing materials, and that is the actual Cintiq. So as we open this up, here we have just some basic cables. This is power supply. Doesn't seem like we have anything else in here. And already, first impression is that lightweight, easy to pick up. I was actually expecting something a little bit heavier. I have not used the 13 or 16 inch Cintiq Pros at all. I wasn't very familiar with their weight. I have used their Cintiq, the Mobile Studio Pros. Those ones tend to be a little bit heavier. I myself never really was interested in getting one of those due to the weight of it. And something like this, I would most likely consider, setting it up at home, not really doing a lot of carry on location on site somewhere else. But as we take off the protective cover, that is the actual Cintiq. Again, very lightweight. As we get the underside of it, we'll see that we have little rubber stoppers in the bottom, right there. We have a mini stand, which is installed to the back end of it. I actually thought there was nothing back there. That's kind of interesting. You actually do have a little piece of fabric right here, which will hold your pen off to the side. That's for the cable input. So that's where your display ports are going to be. So pretty solid, actually, in terms of the fact that it's very lightweight. I like that. Looks like here we have our display cables. Looks like we have several different connection possibilities. We have our HDMI, we have a USB input here, and we have another connecting port. This one goes into the actual Cintiq, and this will be hooked up to your computers. Put that aside. This is for power supply, power bank. Okay, the power box, that is. Inside of it, just a little bit of information, warranty information, setup information, very basic stuff. Yep. It's all in here. In terms of what you get, where things are going to go. I'm personally going to be setting this up to my laptop, not my desktop, just so I can maintain that slight mobility in case I do plan to take something like this traveling, whether it's somewhere, local or somewhere even farther out, maybe even internationally. I'm going to be doing a lot of international trips coming up this month, going into the following summer for 2019. And something like this could be potentially useful where I take it on the road with me, actually. So normally I do carry a laptop. I'm using an Acer gaming laptop for my just everyday use for outside, where I have a desktop at home, and I'm also using iPad Pro with the Procreate app. Cintiq wise, I only use the 24 HD at home, which I will show you in a minute. And I also then have a tablet, so a small little Intuos 4 tablet that came from many years ago, which I'm still using now. So here's pretty much all the components, pretty bare bones in terms of what you're actually going to get. I mean, this is typically what comes with all displays. It's just your display, your pen, your hookups, and all that stuff, and that's pretty much it. In terms of like this, traveling cases, bags, and stuff like that, I believe there might be third party. I haven't really looked up anything like that. I will probably just pack this into a neoprene case and keep it with me in terms of having it on my travel pack. That would probably be it. But anyways, just first thoughts, ideas. Obviously, I'm very familiar with Wacom build quality, and Cintiq's actually, out of all the products that I've used from them, holds up very, very well. I've had actually one of the really older square Cintiqs. It was like a 21 UX, I think, or something like that. But that one I had for many number of years. I bought brand new, and still holds up now. Actually, I have it at the back of my room, just kind of in storage, and it actually still works, but I just upgraded to the 24 just for the better resolution. That's one of the key things that's going to change, especially with these things, is going to be the resolution on the displays, where this is still 1080, but coming out this year, I think one of the big pros, despite the name of the other ones, is that this one is going to be cost-wise, I think, a lot more affordable for people, especially for students that are interested in trying out the world of creative displays, where things like tablets have been the go-to for many students because the cost-effectiveness of it and the mobility of this too. But here, I think we have something a lot more as an option, a viable option for people that want that nice hybrid of a display that they can actually draw on, but also just for the cost side, keeping it on the lower end of it. Where the other options would be things like the Mobile Studio Pro, heavy, large, very, very costly, and normal Cintiq Pros, again, go upwards past $1,000. So something like this right now, I mean, we'll get into the details in a minute here, but generally you're looking at about $650 US. So that's actually very, in my opinion, affordable, and something that if it maintains a lot of the same qualities that the Wacom other Cintiq Pros and of course the tablets do offer, will be, I think, a very, very smart option for many people, even for professionals. So I'm going to actually hook this up to my laptop. We'll see how things turn out. So we'll come back in a second and we'll see how it looks. We've hooked up everything to my laptop computer at the moment, and it was a simple, easy connection with a cable towards the back end of it, where it's on its kind of temporary stand right now, where the permanent stand it is. I have a little extra thing to show you guys. The cable is single connection to the back end. And these all easily connect together. The prop is basically splayed out. Goes back to my laptop, and it's basically a HDMI USB connection. Is obviously hooked up also to that same cable to the power cable, and we'll switch it on. We'll see how everything turns out. So it was a really simple setup. The only thing I have on my laptop as a driver at the moment is the driver for the tablet, the Intuos 4, but I haven't really set up anything for the 16 just yet. So we'll just kind of see how everything works out, and it seems to be running fine. We're bringing up the Wacom desktop center at the moment, and this kind of shows you that the device that's connected right now is a Cintiq 16. The Wacom desktop center is like the new thing that Wacom's been using to kind of, integrate all their devices together under one little window, so that at least you can just access it really quickly and adjust any settings, whether calibration, the pen, display, all that kind of stuff. So it's quicker to just hook up and just start running, where obviously Wacom drivers have always had notoriously bad issues when it comes to setting up everything. But of course you will lose information, things will just kind of drop out. Just a little bit more basic information about the Cintiq 16. I have a little bit of information kind of brought up from the product page on the website store for Wacom, and I'm looking at the US store at the moment, and of course all the prices will be in the US, so if you just go to your respective countries' storefronts, you should be able to find the prices all adjusted. So over here we can see that this is for, at the moment, the Wacom 16. The tab next to it is for the Cintiq Pro. I'll bring this up and kind of show it to you guys in more detail. But basically what I'm looking at right now is that the Wacom 16 has the resolution at 1920 by 1080, so it is a full HD screen. In comparison to the Cintiq 16 Pro, resolution is at Ultra HD at 3840 by 2160. So much higher in resolution. And I think for people that are doing things like video editing, high-end painting, all that kind of stuff, especially if this is your only sole device, then you'd probably want to go with something a lot more higher end, especially if you're going to the whole professional route. Then of course you're going to need a professional device, which is why I'm sure call it a Pro for the 16. But as a student, kind of developing your portfolio, making your own pieces, playing around in the world of, creating art and designs and drawing skill sets and practicing on the digital standpoint, having something like this at this resolution should be more than substantial. Both have the same level of pen pressure. So this has 8,192 levels of pressure for this, the Pro 16. And the regular 16 does also have, it's kind of laid out a little bit differently here, but it says pressure levels 8,192 for both pen tip and eraser. So another key difference is that the 16 that I have right now that Wacom sent to me is not a touch screen, so there's no option for that. Whereas the Pro version, as it states, I believe somewhere down here for multi-touch, it does state that that device is a touch version. So the 24 that I have hooked up to my computer is a 24 HD Pro, which has a touch capability. Other than that, everything else is going to be relatively the same. Things like the active area, the screen adaptive size. This is going to be, let's see, display size is 15.6 inches, and of course for the 16 regular, the one I have right here, that is also 15.6 as well too. So they're the key differences between the two. Now, as you'll notice, the price difference is one of the key factors. The Pro 16 is $1,499, so about $1,500. That's without shipping, without taxes, all that kind of stuff. So quite a bit up there in comparison, where the Wacom 16 Cintiq, the one we're playing with right now, is $649.95. So this is saving you quite a bit. You're actually paying pretty much less than half actually for something like this. So I'm already favoring that side of it, in the sense that you're saving a lot more money, where that money can then potentially be used for other things, even whether it's going to be accessories or programs or whatever the case is. Let's get rid of all the UI, and we just have the monitor. We can just kind of sketch something out real fast. Playing around with shapes and just doing a quick sketch, maybe a bird of some type. At the moment, I'm not feeling any sort of lag or uncomfort with the Cintiq. And again, I'm familiar with their products, so it feels pretty much the same as every other of the products that they've kind of brought out. At the moment, in terms of the screen surfacing, it's smooth. It doesn't seem like it's kind of showing any sort of defect at the moment. Some of the plastic on the rim does have a couple of small little spots of not really scratches, but just slight differences of the finish, where most of it is relatively kind of this nice smooth plastic gloss. But anyways, it's not too much of a detractor from this. We'll do another head study maybe over on this side of it. big hornbill. Put a head right there. Maybe this is a pull out for the eye shape. This is where the branch is going to go, in that direction right there, where the hornbill is sitting on top of. Where the mouth is open, behind holding a little bit of food in its mouth. I think this would also be pretty okay to be able to even hold on my lap. I'm not feeling any sort of heat at the moment. We'll kind of see how that feels as I just kind of work with this a little bit more. Especially on the side of heat is one of the main complaints I get from a lot of my friends and people that work with the Wacom Cintiqs, is that as over time, as you're sitting on top of this thing, drawing and working, is that you tend to get a lot of heat kind of pulling off from the screen, and can be kind of uncomfortable for some people. You know, people that tend to get a little bit kind of heavier sweat off the hands, you know, things like streak a little bit, kind of hard to move around it. So it can be a little bit uncomfortable for people that, you know, tend to have that. So just be mindful, you know, the way things feel towards you. And as much as this is an impression from my perspective, it is my perspective. I won't necessarily say that you need a device like this to become, you know, a professional, to be competitive at that level. I mean, you should be able to create and visualize right off a piece of paper and a sketchbook and pens before you even have to even move it to something like this. Now, of course, the benefit of digital is the fact that, you know, using Photoshop or whatever programs you're going for, like Illustrator or even 3D, is that you have then the digital side to be able to make the changes, but also complete certain tasks a little bit faster because of the benefits of Photoshop and being able to visualize. So whether you're about, you know, kind of changing out a few layers and moving things around to edit stuff, you know, doing color passes, doing full paintings, to be able to transfer files from one thing to another, you know, the capabilities of digital, obviously the benefits behind them are very powerful. But at the same time, again, I will state that a lot of the skill sets and the muscle memories of things that you build from drawing on paper will migrate when you are using something like this. So people ask me a lot of the times, like, you know, if I'm practicing on paper, using sketchbooks and whatnot, drawing on those, is that really going to help me when I really want to start practicing on the digital side? Because it seems like everyone's going digital. It seems like everyone's going to be using Photoshop, and, you know, industry standard wise, they are, okay? For myself, at a professional level, do I draw on paper still? I do, but only when the project calls for it. And majority of the time, projects that I work on, either for animations or games, I tend to kind of divert towards the digital side because, again, if there are changes that the client wants, I will be able to go in there and adjust things much quicker, and so that the deadline is met on a professional level. Now, of course, if I'm working on my own personal stuff, I do still tend to use a lot of analog. So pens, you know, sketchbooks and watercolor paper, all that kind of stuff, even for color as well too. But like I said, I'll even hybrid. I bring things together. I'll start a lot of stuff, you know, analog, and I'll bring it over to the digital side for color passes, and, you know, even vice versa. You can do that too. So like I said, a lot of this now comes back down to the idea and the concept that you understand that this, like Photoshop and any other programs that you'd be using, are tools that you're using to help you complete and problem solve the task at hand that you have to solve. So whether it's going to be about, you know, doing numerous amounts of iterations to figure out what the visuals are going to be, or doing a final polish and render behind the actual studies you may have done in another iteration. So at the moment, I do still feel like a lot of the fundamental practices on paper still are hugely beneficial, because that's the one thing about, I think, that bridge as you go from one direction to another. The things that you pull from the analog side, I think, actually do help you on the digital end of it. But the problem is, when you're learning a lot of the habits on the digital end, they don't necessarily transfer over to analog. So you can't control Z, you can't undo certain aspects of it. You know, the layers are going to be one single, you know, canvas as you're drawing on a piece of paper. So again, there's a lot of certain limitations that people will feel if they get really comfortable on the digital end of it. So now, are those, you know, things, are those bad, you know, having control of layers and all that kind of stuff and control Z? Of course not. And I know that some people will kind of revert to saying things like, they're crutches, or they're, forms that kind of take away the creativity out of this, and you get lost into your piece also. And that can very much be true for some, but again, those have also very much positive benefits if you just use them to the appropriate modesty, or at least in a way that benefits you, where you don't end up kind of latching on to that as a way to help save you for certain things. Especially when it comes to drawing, the biggest thing about it is that people feel very anxious and a lot of pressure being able to perform and produce, drawings and pieces, whether it's an early study or finalized, I guess, asset to be able to turn in. Because again, there's a lot of pressure behind that expectation of being able to get something that you really want. So the digital stuff sounds very attractive because you know that you can go back in there and save multiple layers or duplicate multiple layers and just adjust a couple of things here and there. So like I said, just kind of, understand that a lot of this stuff is mostly advice. I'm not saying that people that only go towards the digital side can't, make it or anything like that. There are many people that work and learn in many different ways, where you actually start with digital, move to analog, or vice versa, or both at the same time. So they're all great things as long as you are being introduced and bounce stuff together and just move around and experiment and just really get a sense as to what you feel is really best for you. And as you continue to really produce, consistent amount of work, you should be able to lock down a good idea as to how something like this can benefit you. So as I do a quick sketch of this hornbill, just to kind of finish off, let's just kind of push a little bit of darks. I just want to see the accuracy. I haven't calibrated this Cintiq also, so I'm just kind of going off of just factory and just kind of going off of what was directly hooked up. I didn't do any other adjustments except for the brightness, so that's a really good sign. And being able to just kind of plug and play, the whole technical side of things, especially when it comes to the logistics and of course all the especially for people that are not used to like hooking things up, especially for people that are maybe not even used to the digital side. I know many artists that are still very much involved into the analog standpoint, and when they get really they start to get plugged into the digital end of it, they get intimidated by the fact that they have to problem solve all the hookups and the computers and everything else behind it. But this makes it, I think, very much more accessible for people that are not accustomed to using a lot of digital stuff. Especially for the older generation, people that have been around for quite a while, or people that are much more settled on the way they actually work analog, but maybe want to play around at some point with digital, with something like this. I think, again, like I said, that accessibility of not being hit with a wall where you have to overcome a lot of the technical aspects of like just understanding how to maneuver and use these things, I think, again, makes it a more viable option these days for many people. So for younger people, I think you guys are going to be more tech savvy and you'll be able to kind of jump into it automatically. It's not going to be unfamiliar territory, even if it's something you've never really used before. We're so used to the, interactive displays, our phones and iPads and tablets and stuff like that. So this is very much a one-to-one transition for many, many younger people coming out of high school and whatnot. And like I said, I think you'll start to hopefully not take for granted the power behind something like this, where for me, my first experience behind tablets and such like that for the Wacom devices was way back in the 90s. Coming out of high school in 99, I was using the really, really old ones. And of course, then Cintiqs, I started jumping into, in the mid 2000s, early 2000s. And so something like that became revolutionary for us because, again, for some people, they also found the tablets and styluses a little bit difficult to keep up with because of the fact that you're not really using the same muscle skills in terms of your hand-eye coordination as you look at a stylus down or to your monitor as you're moving with your hand down onto the stylus. So with this is, obviously much more connected to your natural habits of the way you would draw. So a lot of the training you have done traditionally, which is why I would say would carry over fairly well with something like this. Would this be something that I would consider buying at the moment? And here's my honest answer to this is that without actually using it like on hand right now, I probably wouldn't have the level of curiosity to go out there and try it myself, to convince myself to actually even go buy one. Unless like a friend had it, maybe another student, and they were kind of showing it to me like, hey, you should try this out, and maybe that might convince me. But without actually testing it, in my mind, my thoughts are I'm very much convinced that I don't need something like this. You know, I can just work on my other tool sets. Like I can still just use a stylus if I want to. You know, do I have to spend another $650 to get a a Cintiq to produce the things I need to produce? And again, in my mind, I wouldn't think I needed to. So I would say, no, I'm not going to spend that kind of money. I'm just going to keep what I have and just keep moving on. But I think once you actually get your hands on it and you actually really do feel first, again, the weight, that's one of the detractors for me is weight. And again, I am still actually quite pleasantly surprised in just how extremely lightweight this is. There's not much heat coming off of this right now. I've been working on this drawing and sketch for a little bit. But now that I've done it, and again, I do like the Cintiq quite a bit, especially when I'm using it at home. I think this could be a potential buy for me, especially at the price that it's at. Now, if this was above $1,000, then it's a hard no, definitely for me. Because that 16 Pro, honestly, I would never get it. Despite having a couple of extra features like touch and the remote or having a better resolution on the screen, it's still not going to really do it for me because I'd rather just use my high-end screen on my laptop and use my stylus instead of paying another $1,400 for something like that. But again, like I said, due to the fact that this is far less expensive, and if I was to put myself in the situation where I was a student, and maybe not really working at home as much, maybe working with a lot of other friends, going to things like cafes or in the classrooms, then I think this definitely has a lot more potential and use, and makes it just a lot more sense to be able to actually, not just to convince yourself, but to say that this is actually a necessary tool. And I think that is the reason why I would stand behind it for that. But anyways, of course, at the end of the day, you should really just go test it yourself too. So maybe if you have a friend, someone that has it, maybe you're able to potentially stop by a storefront that might have some of these on display somewhere. I'm not sure. But of course, talking to additional people, seeing other reviews, I would recommend it just to get a little bit more information as to what you think you need at the current moment. And then go from there. So if you spent $650 on something like this and then use the rest of that money, if not a bit more so, to get a decent laptop, then I think you'd be properly set up. And that would be good to go, especially when you're going to be traveling, if just being a student, if anything else. But anyways, we'll end it with this sketch. Yeah, it feels good. Okay, so there's a really quick demo using Photoshop and the Cintiq 16 creative display. Let's go into a couple more details of how some of the accessories are working in comparison to, let's say, like the 24. I'll show you guys what that looks like as well too. And hopefully through the next couple segments, we'll get a sense of the overall and how everything comes together as a package, whether we use certain things or not. Alright, at this point, everything is also now installed for the stand. I wanted to try that out and see how it looks. The pen has been installed into the little strap. Turn off the back end of it. As I flip it around, as you can notice, we have now the stand that actually just kind of hooked in. It's basically a plate that attaches to the back end of the Cintiq, which then the actual stand itself screws into the back end plate via these 4 screws here to here. And we have a slight tab that we will pull to be able to adjust the height of the screen. So if I have it on its stand at the moment, I can raise it up much higher. With almost a complete vertical stand. So as a display piece, this would be actually quite nice. I do obviously attend different kind of conventions and shows, so if I ever wanted to even display something on the table, something like this would be actually quite fantastic. Videos and whatnot. Pretty quick in terms of adjustment. Weight wise, again, not too bad. It would be kind of cool if they had small little wheels on them, but I think actually having a rubber stopper makes it less slippery, if anything else. It did include these little rubber stoppers, but I'm not really feeling these. They're kind of collecting dust a little bit. They're kind of sticking with a lot of stuff on there. Obviously I can place them, somewhere in the back of it, but at the same time, again, I'm not really feeling it too much. It just doesn't look as nice on there. So I don't know. You can play with it, maybe not. I don't know if you want to use it, but that's kind of like, I think, your choice if you have anything else. So there's a little rubber stopper on there. If I change the height again. So it kind of weirdly sticks out there, that part of it. So on the Cintiq 16, for this version of it, these little rubber stoppers are not really that great, in my opinion. So for me, it's kind of whatever. Another benefit is that this stand, again, is much like the Cintiq itself, lightweight. So I'm able to hold it with relative ease, and it stays pretty well locked in. The only criticism that I do have is that I wish this backing stand had a quick detach, so I can actually pull it right off if I needed to. I wish there was something within it that actually helped me do that. Or at the very least, when it's laying down, that it actually laid down flush all the way down. And so that way there, it creates a less, there's extra protrusion from it. So if I ever wanted to carry it inside of my bag, you know, you have a lot of this extra information or extra part right there, and that's definitely not going to help me. So in terms of like using it at home, using it for like a display to kind of show a presentation or something like that, something like this can definitely be used for sure. But that's as far as I would take it for myself. I really wouldn't take it on location. I wouldn't travel with it. I would probably unscrew, take it off, keep the plate as it is, or possibly just pack it somewhere else separately if I really feel like I needed to have it, knowing that I was going to use this for a display somewhere as I travel. So that's pretty much the extent of the display, which has a pretty good weight, very sturdy, doesn't shake too much. But in any case, in general, feels pretty good. It looks great. The screen, again, is awesome. I think the monitors displays from Wacom, the Cintiqs, have always been quite fantastic, and they hold up very, very well. The glass, pretty good. It feels a little bit more matte and not as overly glossy, but I think with these kinds of screens over, you know, prolonged amount of time with your hands sliding along it, the oils start to secrete and get soaked in there. It starts to look a little bit shinier in some areas. So I think using a glove to wear to draw on top of one of these is always a good idea. Do you need a screen protector? I probably wouldn't get one, honestly. I just use that as it is. I'm not sure in terms of Wacom's, you know, if they have services to replace glass and stuff like that. And if they do, most likely the cost is going to be quite high. But like I said, just be mindful about that kind of stuff. Other than that, I like it. I think it's quite nice. I think it's a great little product, especially for the cost. It's very much worth it. I haven't talked to anyone else in terms of their responses to this particular product. So this is all just from me using it right now, cold. But again, in terms of the stylus, any critiques on this one? This is their newest iterations in terms of the pen stylus. And again, their Wacom styluses have always been great. The rubber and stuff like this always tends to collect dust. If I can zoom in a little, I don't know if I'll be able to focus it, but anyways. The rubber on this, you know, it feels fine. It's got a little bit, it's got that tactile feel to it, but when you kind of place it in areas and dust starts to collect, it accumulates over time. I know that you can replace a lot of this stuff. I know that you can, you know, obviously replace the nibs and whatnot too. The little ring right here, I think, can be replaced also. But anyways, it's still tried and true, you know, Wacom Cintiqs and styluses, all very nice. If anything else, you know, I would say continue just kind of playing with yourself. Get out there, test it, feel it, get the sense of the weight. Take a look at the monitor. Is it, you know, bright enough for you? Is it not really high contrast or high enough resolution that you need? And from there, make the choices that you want to go for. And from that, I want to show you guys a couple of images and even videos of the 24 to see the kind of the comparison between the two. So this is my Wacom Cintiq Pro 24, and it's got the touch capabilities. Obviously, I actually now have it on an adjustable arm that they were able to send me as well too, which I can then stand and work, as you see there. And you know, it came with the remote, which I'm a little bit hesitant to use. I tend to use a little bit third-party accessories. The adjustable arm worked out really well for me, and you're able to kind of see how, you know, the scale and the size of it, you know, does for me make a difference. 16 is great for just being able to move around, but I think at a home station, the 24 made a lot more sense for me. So I definitely tend to gravitate towards that. But overall, as a view, again, the 16 is a fantastic device. I would definitely give it my thumbs up and go in that direction, do a bit of research, and you guys should be able to make, hopefully, a purchasing choice yourself. So enjoy. Thanks again for joining in.